They say examination is not the true test of knowledge, but I ask, if you can't pass that which is not even the true test of knowledge, how much more the true test of knowledge? Hello guys, welcome back home, and if this is your first time on this channel, I'm Raphael. I'm currently a pharmacy student at the University of Nigeria. And in this video, I'll be discussing with you guys 5 reasons why students go blank in the examination hall. Because I've seen so many students complain about this, because it's not about how much hours you invest to study. If you can't remember what you studied in the examination hall, it's almost like a waste of time. Nobody will believe all your explanations.
We go explain because no evidence.
You will explain tired, but nobody will believe the explanation that you even did your best. And I know some students will start associating this to superstitious belief that maybe whenever they enter the examination hall, they can't just remember. Maybe they think that maybe someone in their village is manipulating them, but in this video you understand why this happens to you, and you will know how natural it is. I'm not really the best in my class to even talk about this, but I know that I've got some knowledge when it comes to retention, because it tells me that the little hours that I rarely find to invest into study, when I get to the examination hall, I don't forget. And I've gone through many trials and many errors for me to really come to this conclusion of knowing what works and what doesn't work. And I know what makes people go blank in examination hall. So I believe that if you can stay to the end of the video, you'll be benefiting a lot, so that you stop associating superstitious belief to all these things and know what works, so that you don't get to the examination hall and just blank out. It happens. It has happened to me many times, and I've learned ways around it, so that if I read one, I will still remember one. If I read 10, I'll remember all the 10 I read. And join me in the video. I believe you will learn a lot from the video. One of the major reasons why students go blank in examination hall that is mostly underrated is fear. Now, fear could come in different forms. It comes from fear of failure, fear that stems from fear that what you are reading might not come out. And also, I've seen fears that came from people being worried about how God is angry at them. And what fear does is to your brain is, one, it activates the amygdala part of your brain, and this amygdala is responsible for articulation and good logical reasoning. So if you have this type of fear and you're in the examination hall with this fear, it activates this amygdala, and what the amygdala does is that it reduces your ability to think well or think logically. So when you're not able to think well in the examination hall, you won't be able to solve those simple questions or those simple calculations. That's why you enter the examination hall, and in the end, you find out that you just wasted your time in the examination because you can't remember. But when you come out of the examination hall, it's as if everything you read just came back. What happens is that your amygdala was activated in your brain, and when it gets activated, it names your brain. And secondly, the adrenal gland is also stimulated due to fear, and your cortisol levels is increased too. And cortisol is a hormone that is being released during fear, and what it does is that it creates this type of tiredness in you, and you're not able to think straight. And another part of your brain that is being affected by stress is your prefrontal cortex. Once your prefrontal cortex is affected, you won't be able to do simple calculations or think. You will just go blank in the examination hall. This prefrontal cortex is responsible for storing your information. Imagine that when you get to the examination hall and your prefrontal cortex is not able to work, fear names or makes the prefrontal cortex inactive. So when this area of your brain is inactive, you can imagine what will happen, where all the information that you've stored, you've read everything, obviously late nights, where all the information we are stored, but because of fear, it's no more active. You can imagine what will happen to your brain. Then there are many ways that people use for combating fear. For me, I'll say, for me personally, I pray when I get to the examination hall. I pray in the spirit. Some of you that are not religious, I would advise maybe deep breath. Take a deep breath, try to calm yourself down before ever opening your system to log in or to start that exam. It's very important. Or maybe you can search online on how to deal with fears, and remember that God is not angry with you. And the second reason why students really go blank in examination hall and they are not able to remember what they studied is due to inactive study. And there are 2 types of study, which is the active and the inactive study. The Inactive study is a type of movement. I would describe it as a movement. But in the movement, there is no progress. It's possible for you to be making movements and not be making progress. I don't know whether you guys know about, maybe you've read about scriptures about Moses and the Israelites in the wilderness, and you will understand and remember that they were journeying in the desert for 40 years. Were they making movements? Yes, but was there any progress? There was no progress. They were making movements, their brain was telling them that they are making movement, but in the end, they will find themselves in the same spot that they left. So you can actually be studying and be making movements while your brain is not retaining. Progress is your brain being able to assimilate and remember. And one of the ways that I use for doing active study is to try to summarize what I read. Maybe say you finish a paragraph, instead of just copying everything down word for word into two, I will advise that you try to summarize every paragraph that you read instead of just writing everything out. I've seen students, they are serious. When you check out what they are studying, you will see that they are like photocopying everything inside that notes, inside the textbook into their notes. And it's a type of inactive study. The brain enjoys it because the brain likes being lazy. That is why most times after studying and you feel like revising what you studied, your brain will be like, no, I can still remember. But when you go back to revise, you find out that you can't even remember what you studied. Another method that I use for making sure that my brain is active throughout my hours of study is trying to set questions for myself during study. In fact, I prefer this to making smart notes for myself. There are ways of making smart notes, but I prefer setting questions for myself because it gets myself active, and this is where past question comes into play. Because when I know the past question for this particular course or this particular subject, I already know how the examiners do set their question. Though, so if I'm reading, I'm not paying attention to what the way or the manner that the lecturers could ask questions or the examiners could ask questions. So I will be setting questions for myself accordingly. And when I'm done studying that particular topic, I will now go back to my question bank where I store those questions and start answering them. If I can answer those questions there, that means I really understood it. Why answering those questions? That is why when you remember that in the process of study that your brain wasn't really active in some instances or in some ways. So try your best to revise, and revising means, for me, I prefer setting questions for myself, and these questions I will be using it for revising during my examination period. Because you can take 10 hours doing study and your brain was just dormant throughout. You are just wasting. It's not just about covering materials. Someone once said that it's not about covering your syllabus. You can still cover your syllabus and still fail, because if you cover your syllabus and your brain wasn't active during the covering, you are failing that exam. That is why I advise that it is better for me to study, even if it's 5 hours and retain all, than studying for 24 hours and not retaining anything. You get? And remember that movement is not progress. That you are moving and opening textbooks and from one chapter to the other doesn't mean that your brain is making the progress of retention. The third reason why students go blank in the examination is sleep. Sleep is very much underrated among students. When I was still growing up, I was thinking that if I am much awake and I'm not sleeping, that means I'm serious with my academic. That vibe that someone give you a testimony that they study 18 hours a day, they study 24 hours. So you are looking at those milestones and you want to cross those milestones in your mind, and because of that you ignore sleep. I know some students, especially people in pharmacy, they'll be like, I don't have time to sleep, in this faculty you don't sleep. But that is a lie. There is time for sleeping. You have time for chatting people up, you have time for calling people, you have time for gisting, you have time for watching movies, but you don't have time for sleeping. That is very ridiculous. Very ridiculous. Don't pretend that you don't have time to sleep. There is time for sleeping and there is time for study. So, and don't try your best not to mix these things up. Lack of sleep increases your cortisol levels. When it's high, you find out that you are not able to make right decisions in examination hall. That is why sometimes when you are in examination hall, you know this question very well. You answer it even before entering, but you will enter there and start choosing the wrong answers. Not that you didn't know about this question, not that you don't know the answer, but it's just silly mistakes, and it is due to sleep. Once your cortisol levels are increased in your blood, it reduces your ability to think logically and to remember information. That is why you will remember that there are some questions you try solving in your house, and maybe you are not able to solve it. But then when you sleep and wake up and go back to that question, those questions, you find yourself being smart. Like you find yourself solving those questions, something that you were not able to. You did not even know whether in this life you can solve that question before you slept. But after waking up from sleep, you just find out that you are able to solve those questions. So have you not asked yourself like, why does this happen? Why did I suddenly became how did I suddenly become smart at solving this question that I wasn't able to solve? And yeah, this but is the point that lack of sleep reduces your ability to make the right decision. And also it heightens emotions. You can not sleep in some courses and do well in them, but there are some courses that require you rest, especially technical courses like mathematics, like chemistry, like physics. Those things that requires you to think logically and make some calculations you require. It's important that you sleep over those courses. For me, I can study English and go to the examination hall even without sleeping and still do well. They don't really require logical thinking and those. But there are some things questions that requires you to think well. And if you want to pass well in these courses that requires you to think logically, sleep is very important. You can't afford to not sleep before entering the examination hall. It's important, but people take it for granted. They think that staying awake makes them smarter without knowing that it reduces their ability to maximize their potentials. That is why you get to the examination hall. You can't even put yourself together to write. Even if when you start writing, you see yourself you made silly mistakes everywhere. Some people for them 4 hours is enough for them. Some people 5 hours. I also have my own, but I won't recommend it for people. Oh, it's just important that you understand what works for you and know how many hours is good for you. Even no matter how, just try to rest before you exams, you get better. Try this and you give me testimonies on it. Then the last but not the least is a factor that many of you might not agree. I've seen people that don't even agree with it and they are doing well academically, and that is the third factor. I know many people don't believe it exists, so but I believe it exists. And they say what works for you stays for you. For me, having this intuition to study some particular areas of my textbook works for me. It helps me to know where to focus my attention on. I usually tell people the race is not really to the swift. You can run faster than me doesn't mean that you win the race. So and that is where God has to lay some rules. I think it's possible for some people to intuitively they know where the question will be coming from, so they focus their attention there. But it only works when you know God. So I'm not here to lead you to Christ or wherever. Just go and know more about Him and maybe subscribe to Him and give your life to Him. It works wonders because that is what makes the difference between people. That you study for 100 hours doesn't mean that you do better or perform better than me that studied in lesser. So it's all about knowing your God in all these try to pray, get closer to God, and it works wonder. See, revision is very important. Maybe that's the fifth one. Revision is very important. For me, I do buttress and I do emphasize on this channel that it's better for me not to read than to read and not to revise. You don't take your revision for granted. Before entering the examination, try to revise. And also I say save questions for yourself. The importance of this again is that you already know the nature of the question prior to the examination hall, so you're not afraid of what will come out and what will not come out. And study of past questions and what else did I say? Sleep very important. People underrate it, but that's the first thing that you can do for your brain. And I also talk about fear, deal with your fears, check online on how to deal with them. And thanks for watching. And one of the reasons I've not made this video for a very long time is because like a lot of things have happening in my life. Number one, I wanted to make it in February, but our my class we were playing pressure league and we lost. That thing really broke my heart. Yeah, so guys, really broke my like. I just cancelled my plan of making the video. That's when I lost my granddad. Then was very sad, and I could have made it earlier before that, but had I was thinking of my birthday that is upcoming, and that pressure and everything. This was the time. My birthday is on the 6th of April. For your inspiration. Thanks for staying to the very end of the video, and I'm happy that you stayed. And I know that you must have learned a lot. Out of everything that you learned here, just try to shake them out, which one that works for you and which one that doesn't work for you. We are not all wired the same way. Some people we are wired to work. Some principles are meant to work for some people. Some it doesn't work. Some might say, "Oh, I tried this, it didn't work. Oh, I tried that, it didn't work." I don't blame you because we are not like wired the same. And if you have other suggestions that you think why students forget what they read in examination hall, please put it in the comment box below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share with your friends. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to check out our videos on the channel.